Hi friends, welcome back to another video. My name is Lindsay and this is my channel Lindsay Talks a Lot. Today we're going to be wrapping up everything that I read in April, which I believe is 8 books in total. 4 of those I did read for a video that I made earlier this month, trying to read horror and scary stories to see if they could actually scare me. But let's kind of dig into one book that doesn't really fit with the rest. It's called The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Clarissa Broadbent. This is a fantasy romance. It's not huge on the romance, like until the end, but it is considered a fantasy romance story. I'm not gonna get like too nitty gritty into the world because like with most fantasy, the worlds are pretty complex. But essentially, a human girl, Araya, gets adopted in this, sorry, let me back up a little bit. So in this world, there are vampires and there are humans, and the vampires like rule over the world. There are several, I don't want to say classes of vampires, but there are several like vampire communities, and they're pretty much always at war with like one sanction wanting to rule versus the other, and like, you know, one of them ruled for a while, and then Araya, who is a human in this story, is the adopted daughter of the king vampire right now of another sanction, and he's been ruling for like the last 200 years. All her family like died when she was young. She doesn't really know anything about her past. I think she was like maybe a toddler when she was like rescued and adopted by this vampire king. But essentially she's lived her whole life raised by him, and you know, he taught her a lot, but he didn't really love her because when you're in power, like to love is to have a weakness. So she's kind of had it rough growing up, and she doesn't really have friends. She doesn't really do a whole lot. Because it's such a dangerous world, but she enters in this competition that happens every, I want to say 100 years, and the different sanctions like volunteer a certain amount of vampires. I think it's 20, it might be more, but they go through all these challenges over a certain period of time, and they essentially like fight to the death until there's only one left, and they have this like goddess of night or goddess of darkness who will grant the winner any wish or desire that they want. So the current king, when he won, he asked to be crowned king and like to get the ultimate power. So that was his wish. With Araya, she's actually going to be asked to be turned into a vampire. So in this world, somebody who's turned, it's actually really dangerous. There's a really high chance that they could die. So that's why they haven't risked it. But she goes through all these really crazy challenges. She forms some alliances with other vampires. But I just really loved this story. It was so well written. I do enjoy fantasy, but I feel like I kind of have to be in the mood for it because it can be a lot to handle sometimes. But it was just so well written. I loved the characters in here. The action scenes were just very well described, and I really enjoyed it. And the ending like shook me to my core. Like, I called up my fiance after I finished it and I explained like the whole plot line to him because I just had to talk about it because it was just so crazy. There is a sequel to the story, but I'm a little bit nervous to read it because like I loved the first one so much and I don't want the second one to like be a disappointment, but maybe I'll pick it up next month. Anyway, moving on to the next. So like I had mentioned earlier, I filmed a video where I read a bunch of horror fiction to see if I would enjoy it. I had some hits and misses. So first off, I read a collection of short stories about phobias called Phobophobia. All in all, not a bad read. It does make me want to try to get into short story collections a little bit more to see if it's something that I would actually enjoy. I also read The Shining by Stephen King, the one and only. This is a giant book. It's over 600 pages. I have seen the 1970s, 1980s movie with Jack Nicholson in it. I did really enjoy this. I think it was just a touch long. I'm not really going to go into the plot because I feel like everybody knows the plot of this book. There are some similarities between the book and the movie. I think this was well written. It makes me want to check out more Stephen King. In this book though, like he's obsessed with the description of clotting for some reason. Like everything was clotting in this book. But it was an enjoyable read. I also listened to The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty on audio. That was a 5-star read for me. I really, really enjoyed that. William Peter Blatty actually narrated the book. It was like a 40-year or 40th special edition. And he went hard. Like he really went for it with and that like really, it was really, really scary to listen to. But it was just really well written. Like the pseudoscience and the religion and the way he tied everything in there. I have also seen the movie for that, but it's been a really, really long time. So with The Exorcist, we have a young girl that ends up becoming possessed, and it's essentially about like her mom trying to save her life and going through medical and religious routes to try to ensure that. And it's a wild ride. It's a great story. I also read The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, and that is the book that inspired the Hellraiser movies. It's a pretty short story. It's more of a novella. Definitely graphic and gruesome. I don't think that's my kind of genre or subgenre of horror, but I'm glad I read it just to kind of get a taste for things. Not for that reading vlog, I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. That was my first by her. I thought it was a pretty enjoyable read. It's about a couple who, one is a famous TV star, the other is a really successful magazine editor, having this big lavish wedding on this place in Ireland off the coast. And we start to learn some pretty dark and twisted secrets about the couple, about the guests at the wedding. You know, things unravel and slowly start to go on a decline. Someone ends up getting murdered at the wedding. I did listen to it on audio. I thought the twists were really good. I liked the different viewpoints. She goes from the grooms, the bride, the maid of honor, the best man, some of the wedding guests, we get their viewpoints. And I did enjoy it. I thought it was creepy. I thought it had good twists in it. I enjoyed the plot. I think it was a whole lot better compared to You're Invited, which I read, I think, in February. So I'm definitely going to check out more by her. Also, I love her colors, just that like dark background with the bright lettering in front of it. I just think it really works. Lastly, I actually just finished it today, The House Across the Lake by Riley Seeger. This is my first by him, and boy, was it a ride. I should have known that there was a red flag from the get-go when Alex Michaelides quotes on this, an unputdownable page-turner, which is a mouthful in itself. But I'm not a fan of that author, so I should have known if they thought this was good, it probably wasn't going to be good. This story focuses on our main character, Casey. She's an actress whose life is in shambles. Her husband has recently passed. She has basically all but ruined her acting career, and she's become an alcoholic. So she goes back, or really she gets forced back to spend a few months at the lake house that her family owns up in Vermont, I think, to try to get her life together, stop drinking, and, you know, try to build back up. Unfortunately, this lake house that she's staying at is where her husband actually passed away. So it's really triggering for her to be back here. And she spends pretty much all her time here just drinking and wallowing away. And of course she starts spying on her neighbors, this new couple that's just bought a place. She's a supermodel and he's a tech business investor. And they have this, you know, huge house. It's all glass, so you can see perfectly in it at night. And she starts drinking and watching them and slowly starts to realize that things are not all that they seem with this couple. It gave me the Girl on the Train vibes, like 1000% for like the first 50%. I was just like, oh, okay, I guess this is what we're doing. I found Casey's character to be kind of bland, and she drinks way too much to be as clear-headed as she is in this book. Like all the pieces that she puts together and all the things that she remembers, and like even just the physical acts of like getting up and moving around after she's had like 8 bourbons and 3 glasses of wine and like 2 beers. Like there's no way that she would even be able to form a full sentence being this drunk, but she's like doing all this sleuthing and putting all these pieces together, and I just felt it to be so unrealistic. This book is split into like then and now sections. There's like these little black markers in between, and for those sections I was like, are me and Riley, are we like reading 2 different books right now? Because I just felt so confused. I felt like he was like, oh, okay, now we're gonna do this, now we're gonna do this, now we're gonna do this. And I think the idea and the concept of what he eventually turned this into was cool, but the execution was just not. We have an unreliable narrator, which sometimes works, but sometimes is extremely annoying and stupid and just feels like a cop-out. Then we have a bunch of red herrings, which is fine. And like after the first one, I was like, oh, okay, so the plot thickens. And then the plot just went down the drain and flopped. So I don't know. Like, I think I'll give another Riley Sager a try, but this was not it. Not the one. But to wrap up, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the books that I'm planning for May. I kind of was hoping to get through a little bit more this month, but whatever. So I do want to read the sequel to Finlay Donovan's Killing It. Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun. I'm a little bit nervous because everyone says that the second and the third book are like subsequently worse, and that sucks because I absolutely loved Finlay Donovan's Killing It. I've also got Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. This seems like a creepy story. It's about a woman who takes care of her alcoholic father. She works for a prison, and she meets this counselor at the prison, and I guess like shenanigans ensue, and they kind of get in some trouble. And I don't know, I just like it. I really like the cover. I think it's cool. I also have 13 by Stephen Kavanaugh. All I know about this is someone's on trial for being a serial killer, and it's not the serial killer. He's actually in the jury. That sounds so cool. I cannot wait to dive into this. This is all I know about it. This is all I want to know about it. I'm super pumped for that. I also want to get into Bird Box this month because that was going to be part of my planned books for my like spooky weekend of reading. But unfortunately, I just didn't have the time. So my goal for next month is to read it and then also watch Bird Box and see what I think to compare between the two. And then maybe I'll read the sequel for the Crowns of Nyxia, the vampire book. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what was your favorite book that you read this month, and I'll see you next time. Bye.